Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Caspar Craven. Caspar, thank you so much for coming in.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me, David.
Caspar, I was really excited when you said you'd come in and meet me and do this podcast. I've obviously known you in other ways through our time both at the Sub Club.
For quite a few years now, so it goes back a long way, right?
Yeah,
so
maybe 10 years.
Probably about that, actually, yeah.
But of course, there's an amazing story that you've got. And before we jump into some of the leadership questions, I wonder if we can obviously talk about something that's obviously very close to your heart over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years actually, about the book and the journey that you've been on with your family. Can you give just our listeners a quick brief introduction about what that is and what you've been doing?
Of course. So let me take you back on a story. So 2009, I was running my business, Travis, which you remember, here in London. And back then, we had sales of about 400 grand, losing money, and working that 16, 18 hours a day. And as a consequence of that, barely saw my wife, felt guilty about not spending time with the kids, and everything sort of feeling under pressure, arguments about this, that, and everything else, which I'm sure some other people will be able to relate to. And we sort of had an idea to go and do something completely different. And it was my wife who suggested that we go and sail around the world and again create magical, life-changing experiences for us and our kids. And it was completely crazy back then because we didn't have the money, not even remotely close, because it cost a lot of money to go and get a boat and sail around the world. Nicola, my wife, she'd only sailed twice. She'd been seasick both times. We didn't have a boat, so lots of good reasons why we shouldn't go and do it. But we said we're going to create a 5-year plan to go and make this happen, put a date in the diary, and so over 5 years literally changed everything in our lives, and then went off and sailed around the world for 2 years with the 5 of us, and just had the most amazing experiences. Actually sailed 1.5 times around the world. Wow! But in a 2-year period. And
what was that moment? And again, I read a few things in the book myself. I listened to the audio. What was those moments where you thought, actually, this could actually happen? How did that come about? Because that's never easy for people who are listening. Perhaps even growing a business, starting a business, or an adventure. Yeah. What was it for you?
So it was the catalyst was asking ourselves the question: is this all there is to life? So I remember, leaving college and sort of being in my early 20s. You know that thing where you bounce out of bed with energy and enthusiasm in the morning. And by the time we got to our sort of mid to late 30s, just feeling a bit ground down. It's just like, it probably looked okay from the outside. Sort of living in sort of, nice part of England, 2 kids, having your own business. But inside, it was just like, we want more than this. And we're asking ourselves what's really important to us in life. So that was kind of the catalyst to really think deeply about that question. And we spent 6 months working together, my wife and I, to create a story, a narrative of how we wanted our life to be different. And that was the starting point, really thinking about that question, carving out the time to say, what does a different life look like for us?
How did you juggle that, making all that happen with the daily do, which is probably already 100% full?
It was 100% so look, here's the first thing. So the first thing was getting crystal clear on what we wanted to do and why it was important. Because there were so many how-to questions. How do we get the money? How do we get safe? How do we get a boat? How do we homeschool? How do we get safe medically? All those things. If we'd focused on all those questions to start with, we would never have done it. We would have just been overwhelmed by those questions. So the first 6 months was getting really, really clear on what we wanted to do. And then the 4.5 years after that, it was a period of learning and growth in so many different ways. I almost broke the business. I got to the point where I was driving the business so hard that my business partner turned around to me and said, you carry on what you're doing, everybody's going to leave, including me. So I then had to go back to ground zero and learn how to be a leader again, how to really build a team. So it was all forced by having that date in the diary when we said we're going to go and do these things and have a different type of life. So that was the driving thing behind it.
When you were, on your adventures, and probably way before that, you obviously probably set some mission and shared values even for your family.
Absolutely.
How did you go about doing that, and how how can other people who might be listening to this develop those in their own business, for example?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's really interesting is that since we've been back, so we've been back for just over a year and a half now, Nicola, my wife and I, we sat down and we looked at the two things we've been most successful at. One was building up and eventually selling the business that I had before, which we can come on to that. And the other thing was going on our family adventure. And we overlaid what were the things that made us successful in thrive in both areas. And there was a set of principles that we came up with. And actually there were things that I learnt first of all in the business world. So it's things about having a really clear vision. Where are we going? Knowing why it's important, the mission, knowing what are our shared values, how do we behave, how do we act together. And what's fascinating is that this applies equally well in a family as it does in a business. So if you're listening to this and thinking, how do I transform my business? How do I grow my business? Same principles that you use in a family. And as an example, I was in Boston last week with KPMG, and they were talking about culture and values. And what was really interesting is they were saying the fundamental thing is working out what's your personal purpose, why are you here? Because if you get really clear on your personal mission, and then you link that to the company mission, then you get a much stronger connection. And I think we're seeing the rise these days of the purpose-driven organisations, where everyone is engaging with a company and saying, there's a mission that I really buy into. I always love the Steve Jobs story, where he said that when he recruited the CEO from Pepsi, it's like, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come and change the world with me? And it's that sort of thing. It's creating an exciting mission. And I guess, we created an exciting mission for us as a family, and I almost broke the business, and then I realised we had to create an exciting mission for the business. So we worked together as a team in the business and said, the mission we came up with was we said we want to become the world's best data treasure hunters. So we did data analytics. So we created something that everybody could feel proud of and say, that's the direction over there that we want to go in. So it's getting really clear on your purpose in personal life and in business life, because you're the same person, right? And it's just creating that connection between the two things.